Welcome to Good Chat, the podcast from BC AdventureSmart, where we share stories, insights, and tips to help you enjoy the outdoors safely. We talk all things outdoor recreation and adventure while keeping safety at the heart of every conversation. Our goal is simple: to lessen the impact on search and rescue and help grow a stronger safety culture in BC. Whether you're hiking, skiing, paddling, or just curious about BC's backcountry, this is the place for real stories and practical advice to keep you prepared and confident outdoors. Let's dive in.
Welcome to Good Chat, the podcast from BC AdventureSmart. I'm Sandra Riches, Executive Director for BC AdventureSmart, and today's episode is called Trailblazing Women Shaping the Future of BC Search and Rescue. We're going to talk a lot about how women experience search and rescue, how they might be perceived, some pros, hopefully a lot of pros, some cons maybe, but most of all, how women are making a huge difference in their communities and on their specific search and rescue groups. So let's get started. I wanted to let our listeners know a little bit about you, but then I want you to jump into you. Just for listeners, for everyone to know, Renata is a Whistler-based emergency physician. She's also a mountain rescue expert for over 20 years. So between Renata being in the ER or volunteering, hanging from a helicopter and navigating BC's backcountry, she brings extensive skill. I say extensive with a capital E, and a heart with so much passion to every mission. She's also a 2-time TEDx speaker. You're a wonderful mom and a wife. Man, you've got a lot going on. What else can you tell us about yourself?
Well, as you say, I am an emergency physician. I am a certified guide. Some people don't know that. Actually, I spent quite a bit of time in those professional pathways trying to learn how to be self-sufficient and guide others in the mountains. So I spend quite a bit of time still doing that when I can. And as you mentioned, I'm a mountain rescue doctor with about 25 years of SAR experience now. I split my time between clinical work and the mountains, often working, out of helicopters or on technical rescue train with Whistler SAR, and that's year-round, winter and summer. What really drives me is bringing medicine into these environments where it's hardest to deliver. I really love that challenge, and it's a pretty unique professional pathway within medicine for sure. I don't know too many other doctors that do this on a global level, so it's been fun to challenge myself and to see where I can go. And as a woman also, that's been quite an interesting pathway. Rescue work is this, as you know, an incredible collision of teamwork, leadership, raw human resilience, and I've been hooked on that combination my whole career. Alongside SAR in my clinical work, I also work in film and TV, sometimes leading safety teams on productions for people like Netflix or National Geographic, and sometimes even on camera myself as a doctor or rescuer in documentaries and commercials or various TV series. I've worked with people like survivalist Bear Grylls. You might have heard of him, Sandra. He's quite well known. He's done the Man vs. Wild series and many others. I've worked with him for the last several years, and he's a great example of another person who's constantly showing us what is possible under pressure. I've also been involved in survival shows like Alone, where I've served as the on-screen doctor, making very real and serious medical decisions to back up those participant cast members while they push their bodies and while they, just trying to keep them alive, walking down a very fine, narrow line of survival. And I think other than that, these roles have really taken me all over the world: jungles, deserts, mountains, oceans. But whether it's a rescue mission or just a film set, the goal is the same, and it's just to keep people safe in high-risk, unpredictable environments.
It is, and that's exactly what us here at BC AdventureSmart, which was created by the BC Search and Rescue Association 20 years ago, is all about, right? We're here for public safety is what it boils down to. As simply as we can say it, we're trying to help everyone be prepared, reduce that impact on search and rescue volunteers like yourself, which are one of 3,200 in the province of BC, and just add to that safety culture in BC. You brought up so much there. You wear so many hats. You have permanent hat head, I guarantee you. But it's so interesting what you bring to the table, because I think it's really unique. And I know from my experience working with search and rescue extensively as well in BC and throughout Canada, there's not many search and rescue groups that have a doctor on their SAR group, or there's not many volunteers who are a physician or have the level of training that you do. So what made you think you wanted to even join search and rescue in the first place? Because you bring so many unique contributions to the table. What made you think, hey, let's go to SAR. Let's see how that can work for me?
Well, for me, SAR was the natural intersection of my two main passions, and that being medicine and being in the mountains. Whether I'm treating a patient in the ER or long lining out of a helicopter, I may be training ski guides on avalanche resuscitation or keeping celebrities safe in the wilderness. I've always been pulled into that space where adventure meets purpose. There's no doubt about it. I don't just chase adventure, although I do love to do that, but I do chase purpose. I love to find purpose behind what we do. And SAR certainly has given me both in that way.
In British Columbia, I looked up some stats before we came on here, and women consist of only about 22 to 29% of the BC search and rescue contingency. And just as a reminder to our listeners, there's 3,200 search and rescue volunteer members, all unpaid professionals, and only about 22 to 29% of them are women. And that can vary depending on where you are in the region. Renata, for our listeners, lives and works, I do too, here in Whistler, and it's one of the busiest regions in Canada for search and rescue at certain times of the year. Huge area for tourism, as we all know, and it's such a great place to play and live. It's just really incredible. Everything's right here at your back door, which can give some locals as well and visitors a false sense of security, right? These things are easily accessible here. They are in so many parts of BC, but it can bring that false sense of security when it's easy to get to. People really don't think it will happen to them and can really get themselves in trouble, can't they?
Very easily. I actually also remind everyone on our SAR team that we also ourselves as team members, even though we're all highly trained and experts in rescue, we're also only just one trip, fall, or catching a ski edge away from needing a rescue ourselves. We similarly love to go out and play exactly where we go and rescue, and so it gives us a sense of humility as well when something goes wrong for someone. Just the importance of the empathy around that and the need to help that person in that time. We are very clear about that this can happen to anyone at any time. We do love to see people being prepared and prevent these rescues from having to happen, but we also know they can just happen by accident.
Can you talk a little bit about your safety and how it's prioritized as a search and rescue volunteer? Because I think what I hear a lot in my work when I've been doing this for a little bit too is you're risking your lives, you're heroes. I don't dismiss that, but that you're placing yourselves in danger. I hear that a lot. And it's like, oh my goodness, those SAR volunteers, they're in so much danger and they go and save somebody else. Can you define that, what that means to you when you go into a SAR call, how it looks for a trained search and rescue volunteer?
When we are called, we obviously analyze the situation. We do a pre-mission review and planning session with our team. Most of our systems are now quite quickly dialed so that we can expedite these call outs and get to people very quickly. Even, I'd say 3 days ago, we did a call here locally on one of our big glaciated peaks. And as we came in on the heli, it was one of the first times I remember feeling deeply, oh gosh, I don't want to go in there. And it was such a dangerous and precarious spot where the subject individual had fallen into and hurt themselves, that it suddenly the reality of what the risk is for a SAR volunteer became very clear. We had giant boulders, overhead hazard, going down into a couloir, and yet there's our subject. Our patient is sitting there with a broken leg, broken arm, head injuries, and we have to get them out if we can. But we take precautions around that. Our training certainly is meant to reenact those situations preemptively. We sort of practice, we train to go into those situations. And I think in the last number of years, what is becoming increasingly important for our search and rescue profession as a whole is mindset and mental health, and going into those situations with strength, being able to say, okay, I don't feel comfortable here, and sticking your hand up and saying, this is a no-go. We have to stop and make a plan B or a C or a D and go with that. And realizing that risk. We do realize we do this work for free. If you think about that, that's actually quite crazy. How as volunteers, we go into very frequently, we go into high risk zones, whether that is on those couloirs or hanging under a line under a helicopter onto a knife edge ridge, into avalanche terrain to save someone. And yet no one is paid at all. No one. And we fundraise and sell ourselves. In fact, for a majority of our budget is team fundraised on their own. So, it's quite the service that we have here. It is an incredible service. We are very fortunate for it. People maybe aren't as aware as they should be that service is there. But man, people are thankful when we show up. That's for sure.
They're so thankful. They're grateful. Sometimes there's donations. Sometimes there's huge warm hugs, I bet, and maybe letters of appreciation after. And I know there's a lot of conversation also that goes on social media. We won't go down that rabbit hole. That's not why we're here, but I just want to bring it up for a second in the sense that there's lots of opportunity there in that social media to clear some mud, right? You've shared some great insights today about your priority for safety, what you guys do, how you assess, how you can raise your hand and say, hey, just that conversation that to me speaks to that safety culture we're trying to encourage the public to engage in, but that search and rescue engage in it all the time. And those conversations on social media, you can hear comments that might be negative or someone's unaware of what really goes on behind the scenes. And I always love seeing those to a degree because it gives me a chance from BC AdventureSmart's perspective or the BC Search and Rescue Association's platforms to clear up that mud. Share some links, add what we actually do, how and why. Where does funding come from? What does it look like? What are the top causations of search and rescue? Who's getting rescued and where the resources are to help everyone do it safer?
You've nailed it right there. I believe that public education and awareness is so critical in our line of work, especially as volunteers, because we don't get a paycheck at the end of it. We risk our lives to do this. And I also feel the benefit for the public is so great. I had a discussion with one of my team colleagues the other day. We've had 3 calls ranging from broken bones to fatality on the same stretch of ridgeline in one section of one mountain here locally. I won't talk about that now, but just the public awareness isn't around that. Same mechanism, same falls, and how reaching out to the public, educating them, making them aware of where tricky areas are, where to be really skilled. This is where you need to have your eyes clearly wide open when you venture out into the wilderness. I think these things are so critical. And I also do think on the back end, teams rely on external financial support as volunteer organizations. I know I put a post on my last Instagram feed, and it was randomly picked up and looked at by a man in Oregon who promptly sent a check for $5,000 American to our team for medical supplies with a loving note that just said, "Amazing what you do. I've just come across your Instagram feed and I think this is outstanding. Let's start here with some support for you. Thank you for all you and your team do." So I think these sort of moments make reaching out to the public so critical. And I think I think all teams are now sort of online and trying to educate the public and make them more aware of what we do.
That's an incredible story to see that reach came from your Instagram and that they resonated with that and wanted to support from way far away. Like, that's incredible. And it just shows empathy and understanding, doesn't it? I want to talk a little bit more about women's role in search and rescue in BC. You've been involved for a long time. I was previously a park ranger and had some of my own experiences. And if you go to our first episode in our podcast series, you'll hear me talk about clothing that was too big and gloves that were too big and using men's gear. And I won't go down that rabbit hole today, but how has the role of women in search and rescue changed since you first started?
When I first joined almost 25 years ago now, women were rare. You felt like the exception in the room, like you had to prove yourself 10x over everyone else just to get a seat at that table. And even then, sometimes your voice got softened, brushed over, or you wouldn't be picked to go out on the field team to go do a rescue. But now women are leading, and they're leading the rope rescues. They're serving as pilots, heli technicians, and they're planning operations. It's certainly shifting from proving we belong to actively shaping the future of SAR. Because I always think, here's the truth, the mountain ultimately doesn't care about your gender or your pronouns. It only cares if you can think clearly in a blizzard, in the middle of the dark. Can you multitask, and can you step up and help the subject and your team for when it truly matters? It's not without its issues, especially that being a woman can involve being really hard on ourselves more than others would be on us. Every woman, I always thought, in mountain rescue carries two backpacks. I think they carry one with gear, and I do think they carry one with this weight of expectation and to keep up. And over time, you learn to climb with both, and they become the one pack that you hopefully can just carry. Women are really a part of our medical and our emergency rescue system now. I'll give you another recent example from a few days ago. We flew that badly injured climber into Whistler Healthcare Center. We landed, and I was met on the helipad by 3 more emergency doctors. Guess what? They were all women, all in different stages of their careers. And that moment, going from cliffside to the cockpit to trauma care was pure female teamwork. And it honestly was so fantastic to see just how clearly women have come in that whole search and rescue and medical system.
Before you head outdoors, make sure you've got the gear. Carry the essentials like a map, flashlight, extra food, water, and first aid. It can turn an emergency into a safe return. Check out the Pack Like a Pro playlist on the BC SAR Association's YouTube channel.
I guess the one other thing I'll admit is that one of the lighter moments in rescue is the look on a patient's face when they realize the doctor stepping out of the helicopter is a woman. That split second, expectation flips a little bit. That's always quite memorable. Sometimes, you'll have a tough guy who's hurt himself and, they just quietly, they nod, they shake their head. I've had the occasional, oh, wow, you're not who I was expecting to come save me. And I think those moments are quite tender and quite nice. So, yeah.
And they're also sometimes still, I think, let's say right now in 2025, sometimes surprising that people are still saying that. But then again, when I saw your picture, I saw that post of you guys in the helicopter on the pad, and my heart just grew. It was just so great to see all of you there and just to have that example. And it kind of jumps into my next section here. I want to talk about leadership, mentorship, and representation. That picture is the epitome of that, in my opinion. The importance of mentorship and having role models. And I think back to when I was a park ranger, I don't remember having another female role model at my work. I was it, right? I was the only one at that time. Everyone else was male. So that was me setting the stage for me. I was confident and knew what I was doing and got trained to do what I needed to do if I didn't know, but I also brought things to the table that everybody else did. I felt quite equal in my crew. My crew were great. What has mentorship looked like for you? Maybe on both sides, giving and receiving. Can you give us any examples of that? What does it look like for you?
Yeah, I was very lucky. Most of my mentors in my career in search and rescue and medicine didn't care that I was a woman. They cared whether I could perform, and whether I could contribute, and whether I was reliable. And that gave me the confidence to trust my own skills, ultimately. Most people think survival medicine and mountain rescue work is all about gear and strength and technique. It's not. It's also much more about mindset at the first priority level, and whether you even believe in yourself to go and do what you're going to do and feel that you belong. I try to pass that mindset on now to younger women in SAR, in medicine, even in film. I'd say probably 10 to 15 times a week, I get a DM through my Instagram, usually from a young woman in medicine who has seen my Instagram feed and said, wow, how can I do what you do in medicine? You're the exact kind of doctor I want to be. Well, you should probably first get a role where you get paid by something to pay your bills, but do this on the side. This is a great extension of medicine, and certainly an exceptional way to help out on the team. Leadership isn't just being about the loudest or the toughest voice. It's about being the one that people trust when the storm hits, and that they can count on you. The best mentors, I don't think they mold you into a copy of themselves. They often see what your own strengths are, like what fire do you have, and they help you to become that strongest version of you. So I've been very lucky about that, and be seen as equals. It is tough at times still, in search and rescue and in medicine. You still come up against men that they look around you over your shoulder at the tall guy behind you. Of course, we still all go through that, but it's pretty easy just to prove yourself. Just be there, step up and be there, and become the strongest version of yourself.
How do you think, I talked about earlier, we have 78 search and rescue groups in the province of BC, 3,200 volunteer members, unpaid again. How can search and rescue groups in British Columbia create more inclusive environments for women? We talked about mentorship or building that confidence, having that mindset. Sometimes a lot of that comes from us, right? But how can SAR groups create more inclusive space?
Inclusion has to be intentional. Recruitment is easy, retention is harder. Women stay when they see a path to leadership, when they are valued for their position, when their training is perceived as growth, a gain for everyone, not just themselves, and when their decisions carry weight. I think that's really a significant thing. Here's the thing, inclusion isn't just about fairness, it's an actual survival skill. We need to feel included in order for the bigger organism of the SAR team to survive well. On the mountain, gravity pulls us all the same way. It all comes down. So, a rescue really does erase gender. It comes down to who can get the job done safely. Every perspective strengthens the team. I think the more voices on the table mean better, safer decisions in those critical moments. But yeah, I think it has to be intentional.
I love the idea of what we can share for others who either reach out to you, like via DM or in our community, or our children or other women who see us. I remember a few years ago, I was delivering our snow safety education program with BC AdventureSmart through our webinar series. And sometimes you get feedback or comments or what have you. And someone came back and said, it was so refreshing to come in and see a woman leading that presentation. And I didn't really think about that, but they said they came in expecting to see a man talk about snow safety or avalanche awareness or what to do in the backcountry or what to do in an emergency. Stuff that I can say in my sleep, and you can repeat many things in your sleep too, based on what we've experienced. But they came in even in 2025 with the expectation that the title of that topic was going to be a man. They already thought that. And then they were like, oh, it's not.
I think you've really stated that very well. The importance of representation by women in search and rescue is critical. And that's because you can't be what you can't see. If you don't know as a woman where you can go in SAR, you might not know that pathway exists. When a young woman sees someone like herself hanging 150 feet under a helicopter, leading a rope rescue or running medical safety, yourself, running BC AdventureSmart, something changes. She realizes this world of rescue belongs to her too. And that sense of belonging is what fuels all women volunteers and the next generation of female volunteers. I firmly believe in that.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. We may or may not have had mentors, or maybe we did, but we're also setting that stage, right? We're also stepping forward in that role to be that for others, which comes natural to you and what you do. And it's a great way to share with others who see you either in person or online or wherever you are. It's a great example. What advice would you give women who are interested in joining search and rescue but feel just a little bit hesitant?
Just step in. None of us feel ready for every mission. I've been on rescues, film expeditions, you name it, where almost nobody felt completely ready for what they're about to face. You learn by doing. Courage shows up in the field, not before. So if you can bring commitment, curiosity, and the willingness to train hard, you already belong. Don't wait for the perfect resume or perfect moment or perfect time of your life. SAR is just about showing up. You grow fast and you're leaning on each other in your team. And you'll see soon that it's a great space to be for women. They bring a lot to the table.
What we do bring is unique, I think, sometimes. Yes, it can be skill-based. It can be training-based. It can be all the qualities that we bring that are needed as a tick box. You know what I mean? But we also do bring unique characteristics to the table as well. If it's empathy, great listening, the list is lengthy and I could go down it, but we also bring different qualities to that table that can benefit the SAR group, that can definitely benefit the subject and the outcome of that, right? To me, it just needs a balance. I think the balance is key.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I see it, a future for women in SAR is going to be quite explosive. I think it's a great field for women to be in. Women are already shaping SAR and patient care. Obviously, with people like me or planning and field operations, leading field teams. The next step is leadership. I think more women directing operations and sitting at that management table is what's going to be critical, because those roles really set the tone, the policy, the culture of a team. And the truth is that diversity doesn't make a team softer. It makes the team sharper, more adaptable, more innovative. And I also think in the future, certainly, we're all being surrounded by everything AI now. I actually love AI. I work a bit in med tech and AI, and I think that is just at the beginning of where we'll see the influence of innovation using technology in search and rescue. And again, women are right there. Women have a huge role to play in shaping that future as technology comes on board with search and rescue operations.
Every year in BC, search and rescue groups respond to thousands of calls, and most come down to three things: injuries, getting lost, and pushing past your limits. Wear appropriate footwear, learn how to navigate, stay within your abilities, plan so you can reach your destination. Your destination is home.
I think the public have their perception of what happens with search and rescue. If it's a helicopter rescue, a winter rescue, trekking through the bush, whatever it is, but there's so much that goes on behind the scenes. And I don't just mean training for you and your members, from AI to administration to fundraising to outdoor education. I always describe search and rescue to the public when I'm talking to them as a loaf of bread. And there's many slices to that loaf of bread. And every single slice is a different component to search and rescue. One slice in that loaf is response. And that's what the public see the most in media, on social, on TV. The next slice could be outdoor education, what I do. Another slice is fundraising, administration. Who takes care of all the trucks? Who takes care of all the gear? Who sweeps the floor? Who turns the lights on? Who does all of these things? Administration, it's just crazy. Who puts their hand up to belong to the board or involves themselves more in the community to organize events? The list is lengthy, or that loaf of bread is huge. That's how I like to describe it.
Absolutely. There's multiple layers to search and rescue, as you say, and people don't realize the actual time output for a rescue call can be about the shortest piece of it. It's actually all those layers behind the fundraising, the administration, the training that we spend so much time. Whistler Search and Rescue, as many teams, we all gather together at least once, sometimes twice a week, sometimes more, to train for a few hours at a time so that we know when we go into the field, we've got a certain level of skill set in certain specific ways, whether that's ropes or avalanche or, mountain rescue. Like, we train. And that's all, again, all volunteer time. It's all people just coming together, trying to ultimately help others and help save a life, especially.
On an annual basis, every year, just in British Columbia, search and rescue volunteers like Renata dedicate and donate more than 500,000 hours to search and rescue, to response, to training and outdoor education. Over 500,000 hours are dedicated just in BC to search and rescue. It's just incredible that that much time is committed. And you just mentioned there, once, twice, sometimes 3 times a week, you're training for something that's specific to this region here in Whistler, right? So it's mountainous, there's great terrain, there's all seasons are here, and everywhere in the province, people are training unique to that topography, unique to that region. It could be swift water, could be avalanche, could be a helicopter. The list is lengthy, right? So
yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. And we also train for every discipline. So some teams run differently. Our team is a team where every individual trains in every discipline. So although I might be a medical expert, I am not just relegated to medical situations. I will be trained on every other facet: avalanche, mountain rescue, comms, everything. Everybody has to wear multiple hats when you're on our team, so that we have that very quick interoperability within the team itself, that we can mix and match members as they are available as volunteers to send them out to go and effect a call. So that's, a great thing for us. We certainly spend a lot of time cross training, but our team also, I got to say, we are a highly skilled team. All of our members have some background, some skill set that certainly helps the greater skill set of the team itself, particularly the women on our team. We still don't have, I'd say we've got 5, 6 women on our team out of 35. I think, your stats are about right on that, maybe a few more. Every single one of those women on our team are badasses. If I can use that word. They are like expert ski guides. They're avalanche dog handlers. They are patrollers. They've dealt with the worst. And, I certainly think in terms of skill set, those women on our team they're high level. They are real. They are as good as it gets on search and rescue for women. It's a really cool group of women. And, it's fun. We often have, every time there's an all women rescue, which we've now had several in the last few years, it's high fives all around. And that's pretty fun. It is pretty cool. We always have a good laugh at the end of it, or yeah, that was awesome. We did it, ladies. This is great.
You did do it, and you'll continue to do it. The work that goes into this, I use that word every time, but I think, okay, it's not work. Work means you're being paid, but the work you put into volunteering is like no other, really. And I want the listeners to really think about inclusion. The next time they might see search and rescue in the news or in a paper, in a magazine, or on social, let's think about the women in search and rescue and what they represent and how they represent and the skills they bring to the table above and beyond. It's really quite something. Renata, if there's one thing search and rescue groups in BC could do today to support women in search and rescue, what would it be?
Be intentional. Build mentorship pipelines. Put women in visible leadership. Normalize women's voices in training. That representation inspires, and that mentorship retains, and the leadership transforms. When women are supported, the whole team and the whole mission becomes stronger. I say search and rescue isn't just about ropes, helicopters, or medicine. It's about heart. It's about showing up for each other when the stakes are highest. Everyone else and I have been pushed on missions that pushed us right to our edge. Whether you're kneeling by patients at a plane crash, you're hauling someone off a ridge at 9,000 feet, or keeping someone alive in a jungle, all of it, one truth repeats: that fear is normal, but courage is a decision. And I think, the future of SAR will be shaped by those who bring leadership, calm, and empathy into that storm. Women bring those qualities powerfully, and their presence makes us and every team stronger. So step forward. I think even if you don't feel ready, you're a woman, you're interested in SAR, step in anyway. With time and that effort, you'll be amazed by what you're capable of. And remember, just every time you're out there helping to save just one life is worth every ounce of the effort it takes to be there. It's so great. It's a great thing, something to be proud of.
You are that presence. You bring that presence and that example to other young women. So Renata, thanks so much. I really appreciate you coming on. It was great to chat. I look forward to seeing you at the gym. Thanks everybody today for listening. That's it for the episode. Good chat, Renata. Thanks for coming out.
Thanks so much.
It's just been wonderful to have you on. Having experts on our podcast like Renata reminds us that rescue volunteerism in BC isn't all about helicopters, quick rescues, or cookie cutter scenarios. It's about dedication, leadership, mentorship, volunteerism, and supporting one another, all in the name of public safety. Thanks for joining us, everyone, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to Good Chat with BC AdventureSmart, where stories and safety come together. Remember, enjoying BC's incredible outdoors starts with being prepared. By making informed decisions and learning from experts and adventurers alike, we can lessen the need for search and rescue and build a stronger safety culture across the province. If you enjoyed this episode, please check the show notes for resources and tips. And as always, adventure smart and be prepared. And we'll see you next time on Good Chat with BC AdventureSmart.